Dear audience, imagine a historic moment where the two most powerful people on the planet face each other amid the icy Alaska, where a single word could end a bloody war or push the world into a chaotic abyss, causing millions to tremble at the prospect of widespread conflict. You will not be able to take your eyes off the screen as you uncover the secrets behind this meeting and what might happen if everything falls apart. As of now, President Putin's schedule to Alaska remains unchanged. This means the two sides will have their first meeting, and this is the first time President Putin sets foot on American soil in 10 years. Before President Trump meets President Putin, both sides have had separate contacts. President Putin has met with representatives from China, Iran, and North Korea to discuss approaches to dialogue with President Trump. Conversely, President Trump has held video conferences with European leaders and Ukrainian President Zelensky. Before the summit takes place on August 15, 2025, in Anchorage, Alaska, all parties are closely watching this conversation. However, we still do not know the outcome, and there is much speculation that President Trump might concede to Russia. Yesterday, President Trump affirmed that he has made no concessions. He is merely acting as a bridge for the two sides to talk. How the two sides behave is their business, but the final result is decided by them. He does not force either side to concede on any matter. That is President Trump's assertion. At the same time, he issued a threat to Russia, and this threat is not only aimed at Russia, but also at some other parties. In the latest news, President Trump stated there would be serious consequences if Russia does not agree to end the war in Ukraine. After the meeting in Alaska on August 15, 2025, President Trump issued a warning on Wednesday. He is preparing to sit down with President Putin at the Elmendorf-Richardson base, and there will be consequences. When responding to reporters on this issue, President Trump refused to disclose details of the sanctions. Among other things, President Trump said he had a phone call with him and had many good conversations with him. When he returns, he will see his rockets hitting hospitals, rockets hitting apartment buildings, and people dying on the streets. President Trump said this and thinks the answer is no. Because he had the phone call, he wants to end this war. This is Biden's war. He wants to end it and is proud to have ended this war along with 5 others. However, he thinks the answer will be no. That was President Trump's statement, in which he issued a threat. If President Putin does not come to the negotiating table, at least for a ceasefire agreement, there will be consequences. This is President Trump's view as a mediator. Thus, we make a prediction. With pressure from both Russia and Ukraine, this summit may not achieve the desired outcome for everyone, meaning a ceasefire agreement. President Putin will present his conditions as always, and Ukraine will also present their conditions. These two conditions oppose each other, and how President Trump will reconcile them is unknown. As explained, it is possible that the area controlled by Ukraine remains Ukrainian, and the area temporarily controlled by Russia remains Russian. That is the Donbass region, related to the ceasefire, stopping fighting to enter negotiations. First, both sides must commit to a comprehensive ceasefire. No shelling, no rocket attacks on each other. The fighting on the front lines must also stop. Russia will not bomb or launch missile attacks on Ukraine. Conversely, Ukraine will not send troops to attack Russia. This is a ceasefire for now. This solution could last 7 days or 30 days to arrange a schedule for peace negotiations. This is the most positive outcome. The most positive being an agreement on a 7-day or 30-day ceasefire, meaning a comprehensive ceasefire. This could be the highest achievement President Trump attains in his meeting with President Putin, nothing more. That means not moving towards real peace talks, just a ceasefire agreement. This is what President Trump wants, and the next step he will arrange. But wait, if the meeting fails, with no ceasefire agreement, you will be shocked to know that President Trump will launch decisive moves that will make Russia and its allies tremble. If the meeting fails, with no ceasefire agreement and no roadmap to end the war through peace talks, what will President Trump do? This is a question many people ask. If there is no ceasefire agreement and no roadmap towards final peace talks, what will President Trump do? Of course, he has threatened Russia with consequences, and we have predicted those consequences. First, President Trump will impose tariffs on all partner countries and customers of Russia, as he did with India. India faced 25% plus 25%, totaling 50%. Additionally, Brazil currently faces 50% or possibly higher. China faces 30% or possibly higher. That means countries importing energy from Russia will all be sanctioned by President Trump. Not only countries hostile to the Western Bloc, but also allied countries will be sanctioned. President Trump will not spare even his closest allies. Hungary under Viktor Orban is an ally who absolutely supports President Trump. But Hungary imports 85% of its gas from Russia. They will be sanctioned because President Trump must be tough on all of Russia's customers. Among Russia's customers, there are allied countries and hostile countries. President Trump takes a fair position. He imposes tariffs on all countries importing energy from Russia, not only on hostile countries, but also on allies. He imposes tariffs even on allied countries under Viktor Orban, one of his closest allies. However, he will support Germany, France, or Italy. These countries also import energy from Russia. Not only China and India, but all countries still importing gas from Russia will face tariffs. However, he will support them. Hungary will face heavy tariffs and must stop importing gas from Russia. When they stop, they will need gas sources, and he will give the green light for the United States to provide credit to Hungary under the guarantee of the U.S. government. That means he still enforces comprehensive sanctions. He punishes all countries buying even a drop of oil or gas from Russia with sanctions. But for allied countries like Hungary, he has a different approach. Hungary, Slovakia, or Italy, he will guarantee and encourage U.S. gas supply companies to provide gas to these countries on credit, meaning they do not have to pay immediately, with the U.S. government guaranteeing the payment. If those countries default, the U.S. government guarantees the amount. This is how President Trump will act. This is how he will act if Russia refuses a ceasefire agreement. He will apply all levels of sanctions. He does not reveal details because he does not want to cause chaos before announcing them. And given his character, he plays fairly. He does not only target U.S. hostile countries like China or distant partners like India. He has already imposed tariffs on India, but not yet on China and others. He waits for the meeting on August 15, 2025, with Russia to decide. All countries will be sanctioned, and he encourages U.S. allied countries to increase production to help those countries, for example, Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates. Qatar and Kuwait are countries rich in oil and gas. They will transport to U.S. allied countries. Additionally, he will directly require some countries to pay immediately. Germany or Italy must pay immediately when U.S. oil and gas are delivered. But for countries like Hungary or Slovakia, he will be lenient. That means still supplying gas to them but without immediate payment, with credit provided by U.S. companies under U.S. government guarantees. This situation may occur. That means President Trump will sanction Russia. But is that enough? Not yet. Besides imposing sanctions on Russia's client countries, the next step President Trump says is, okay, I will support, but my support is not free European countries. You say you guarantee European security. In the latest announcement, Europe said that Ukraine will decide its own future, while affirming European defense security. You remember this news? Ukraine said they would decide their future before the summit between President Trump and President Putin, stating that Ukraine must affirm its future in our agreement. In that, the decision must include Ukraine, and before this summit, 26 out of 27 countries issued a declaration, which must include the defense security part. It is called European defense security, still placed in the context of the war between Russia and Ukraine. Thus, Europe wants security. The United States supports unless a member country is attacked by Russia in NATO. Of course, the United States must intervene based on Article 5. Based on Article 5 of the NATO alliance, the United States must get involved. But now the war is happening in Ukraine, not a member country, so the United States does not intervene. However, the United States will support weapons, and Europe must pay for those weapons. And a few weeks ago, Europe agreed on a budget to pay the United States. For example, Germany buys more Patriot systems. The Netherlands buys more Patriot systems from the United States. Their systems are supplied to Ukraine, meaning Germany has 6 Patriot systems, transferring at least 4 to Ukraine, and within 8 months, the United States produces 5 more systems to supply Germany. Germany buys Patriot systems from the United States to support Ukraine. This is how President Trump supports, meaning we support you to pay, because you say this is European defense security. Therefore, the first thing is he will support in that way. As for the issue of his agreement with Ukraine regarding minerals, that is another matter. For example, he exploits minerals on Ukrainian territory. A U.S. company mines them, and that money is used to pay if weapons are purchased directly from the United States. It will be deducted. For example, right now there is no money to buy weapons from the United States and other countries supporting Ukraine, but it is not enough. Now Ukraine also has to buy on its own. They don't have money to buy. Those minerals are the money to pay for U.S. weapons. This means that on one hand, the U.S. directly provides weapons to Ukraine, and on the other hand, indirectly provides weapons to Ukraine through European countries. This scenario can happen. All European countries, if they want to protect Ukraine, if they want to continue the war between Ukraine and Russia so that Ukraine can regain territory, they will have to spend money. As for the U.S., having a separate agreement with Ukraine is a matter between the U.S. and Ukraine, unrelated to Europe. Unrelated to Europe. Whether the U.S. supports Ukraine or how it supports is an agreement between Ukraine and the U.S. As for Europe wanting to help Ukraine, that is a different matter. It is what it is. There is no ambiguity. This will be one of the things if the meeting on August 15, 2025 fails. If there is no ceasefire agreement, he will take the second step. The first step is to sanction Russia's customers. The second step is to support weapons for Ukraine through European countries, as well as through the agreement between the U.S. and Ukraine. And he told Mr. Zelensky yesterday in a phone call that there will be security guarantees for Ukraine, but not necessarily Ukraine's NATO membership. This is one of the things that will happen. As for whether Ukraine joins the European Union or not, that is Ukraine's matter. The European Union is an economic bloc, not a military bloc. The military bloc is NATO. The EU is an economic bloc. Whether Ukraine joins or not is a matter for Ukraine and Europe, not related to the U.S., not related to the United States. The U.S. does not intervene. That is the second thing President Trump will do if Russia does not agree to a ceasefire agreement. And the third thing, when Europe declares that they will promote their own security, meaning taking care of their own security, he will take the next step. He will start to be tough with Europe because he knows the peace talks have failed. Russia maintains its position, Ukraine maintains its position, no ceasefire agreement, he will withdraw from the role, and when he withdraws, European security will be reassessed by him. That means NATO countries, if they reach 5% next year, he will send military forces there, strengthening the U.S. military capability in those countries. U.S. military assets in those countries, especially the 3 Baltic countries, and Poland. These are countries that have reached over 4%. By next year, they will reach 5% of their total GDP for defense budgets, especially Poland, which just got a new president considered his ally. Therefore, he will not abandon these people. He will strengthen military support, including U.S. troops stationed in Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, as well as Poland. Because these 4 countries have reached over 4% of GDP, next year, they will reach 5%. Therefore, these countries will not only have U.S. troops, but also U.S. military assets will be transferred there. As for NATO countries that have not contributed enough 5% and have no roadmap to reach 5%, he will withdraw some U.S. military forces. He will withdraw some military forces. He has said that countries that do not pay enough 5%, he will leave them alone. This is his rule. That means he forces Europe to choose. The choice is where Europe's position is. If Europe is tough, capable of taking care of its own security, it does not need the US. This is considered a dilemma for European countries. The dilemma is, for example, Spain. Spain declared it would not meet 5%. Now they have not even reached 2%. He will withdraw all US military assets from Spain. He then moves on to Italy. In addition, he begins to apply an economic fairness policy, not only withdrawing troops from Spain but also imposing taxes on Spain if Spain does not balance its trade deficit with the United States. Tariffs are also a tool used by President Trump. He takes a harsher step with countries that do not meet defense budget requirements. Number 1. Number 2. Countries that do not align with U.S. strategy. He and Marco Rubio have said that all allied partner countries worldwide, including enemies, if they do not meet the economic security interests of the United States, the U.S. will reduce its influence. This means he does not stop at tariffs. He uses all other tools to separate that country from relations with the U.S. if they implement policies that do not align with U.S. strategy. Because this time he is back, he affirms that the U.S. leadership position must be absolutely respected. It must be absolutely respected. Secondly, the U.S. strategy is to re-establish the global order. If any country does not agree with this order, it can stand outside the track. Standing outside the track means that country no longer has U.S. partners or allies. If they stand outside this strategy, they no longer have partners, even if they have been allies for decades. He can cut off, change the status from ally partner to competitor or enemy. But he can change it if they do not meet the economic security interests of the United States. This is the policy Marco Rubio affirms. Any country that implements policies not aligned with U.S. economic security strategy will be pushed to the sidelines. That means he affirms the U.S. position, and Europe in general, 27 countries in the European Union, and all European countries must make a choice. They must choose. They either stand with the U.S. to implement the strategy to ensure security and economic development, or choose an opposing competitive stance. If they choose to be competitors, okay, the U.S. in principle considers that country a competitor. When a competitor, the stronger wins. If a competitor. But if an ally partner, the U.S. can be accommodating. But competitors and enemies, the U.S. is tough. Therefore, this time, if an agreement between President Trump and President Putin does not happen, the third step is he affirms the U.S. position, the leadership position, that countries under the U.S. leadership flag must accept the conditions. Countries that do not agree with U.S. strategy can stand alone, go over to Russia or China as they wish. This is how he operates. Because he does not want to waste more time on the Russia-Ukraine war. He has many other strategies to pursue, including the Middle East, Asia, Africa, and other more important regions, especially the U.S. backyard, Central and South America. He still has many adjustments to make in each region. Therefore, he does not want to spend too much time on Europe. Europe can handle its own security. He will take this approach regarding failure if the peace talks cannot be pushed forward, considering the summit a complete failure, no ceasefire achieved, no peace roadmap reached. He will proceed in those directions. First, punish all Russian customers. Second, support Ukraine through countries that want to maintain security. The direct issue between Ukraine and the United States is a different matter. If Ukraine chooses to accept standing under the U.S. flag, he will push strongly. But if they choose the European side, because they are a European country, he will be clear. Whatever you buy, I sell. Whatever you buy, I sell. If you don't have money to pay, then pay with minerals. I will not support anything else. But if you stand under the U.S. flag, meaning accepting U.S. leadership, then I, as the big brother, will protect you in various ways depending on Ukraine. That is a private matter between Ukraine and the U.S. Europe and the U.S. is a different equation, because Ukraine is not yet a member of the European Union. They are also not a NATO member. They stand independently. They have the right to decide their own future. Europe, he has a different way to handle. He has a different approach related to balancing trade. Regarding policy, his policy is very clear. He is currently in disagreement with Europe. The disagreements relate to U.S. companies being subjected to European laws. He has ordered U.S. diplomatic staff in Europe to campaign against the Digital Services Act, DSA. If Europe maintains this DSA, gradually Europe will become an adversary. One of the issues Europe must face with him is the Digital Services Act. This law tightens control over U.S. companies, limiting freedom of speech. Therefore, this time, if the peace talks fail, it will help him be more straightforward. He no longer cares about the 80 years of past alliance. He no longer worries about that issue. He is resolute in the position of U.S. leadership. Any country standing under the U.S. flag will have good relations and leniency. Any country that does not will stand aside, because this time he is very clear. The political polarization in the world will be clear. This is one of the things that will happen if the meeting between Trump and Putin is unsuccessful regarding Ukraine. But this failure leads to consequences. It leads to the consequence that the war falls into ambiguity. No one knows when it will end. Therefore, I predict that if the peace talks fail, the meeting fails to achieve a ceasefire or a peace roadmap, there will be consequences that he will take action on. But if, luckily, there is a ceasefire agreement, it will be considered his victory. Countries will see the ceasefire agreement as a positive step and must nurture it. If there are attempts to sabotage, that is another matter. But at least the meeting on August 15, 2025, according to predictions, Putin may for some reason agree to a short-term ceasefire agreement, either 7 days or 30 days, then reassess. But at least, even in the worst case, achieving nothing, meeting and then leaving, except for other issues Trump and Putin discuss, the Ukraine issue will have no agreement, no ceasefire. Then what President Trump will do afterward are the predictions I have presented. But if there is a ceasefire agreement, it will be considered his victory. At that time, Europe must consider who has the courage to confront and negotiate with Putin. They must understand that if he achieves a ceasefire agreement, the only person in the world now who can do this with Putin is Donald Trump. No other world leader has done it. Even NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte or the President of the European Council cannot do it. He can. We wait to see the developments on August 15, 2025, and the results. I hope it will be good news, at least a ceasefire agreement. But if it is like the negative prediction with nothing achieved, what he will do immediately afterward are the things I have just presented. Dear viewers, thank you for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe to Mr. Jack's World Panorama channel for more in-depth global analysis. Don't miss the next video.